you my life. That's what you want, isn't it?
The gods will punish you for this.
They can't stop me. I will fulfill my vow, whatever the cost.
Hellblade has been sitting on my shelf for years, waiting for that rainy day where I dust it off and finally give it a try. And lately, I've been seeing so much about Hellblade 2. I've seen some really cool trailers and even cooler gameplay footage, and I knew I needed to play that game. So like one would, I decided that today was going to be that rainy day. So I just played Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice for the very first time, and I have a lot of thoughts that I want to share with you guys. And that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to share with you guys my thoughts, my opinions. I'm going to show you some raw gameplay, all from the perspective and the point of view of a brand new player of this beloved cult classic. But before we do that, hit that subscribe button. I talk about video games all the time on this page. I do day one reviews very, very often. When Hellblade 2 comes out, I'm going to be reviewing it on the day it comes out. But I also talk about movies and TV shows as well. But enough with this intro. Let's talk about Hellblade. So first thing, I'm gonna do my best to avoid any spoilers in this video. I know this game came out 7 years ago now, but I have a feeling there's probably a lot of people in the same boat as me who are just now deciding to look into it because they're interested in the sequel. So I will talk about the story a little bit, but I'm not gonna get into any super specific details, and all of the gameplay footage that you're seeing is from the first third of the game. But overall, I'm gonna approach this video like I would if I was reviewing a brand new game. I'm just gonna give you my thoughts as a brand new player experiencing Senua's journey for the first time. But anyway, let's start off with my positive thoughts. As I was prepping to make this video, and as I was going over all the thoughts in my head, I came to realize that most of what I enjoy about this game stems from how well it takes your basic AA gaming experience and presents it to you in the best way that it possibly can. I love all sorts of video games, AAA, AA, indie, you name it. And if you've been watching this channel for a while now, you know that I tend to review AA games more often than I review AAA ones. But in general, for me personally, it's not often that I love or even really like a AA indie-esque game like this. Not that I don't appreciate them or understand why some of them are beloved in the gaming community, but because AA games tend to be very simplistic in their game design and their mechanics, they tend to take one or two key features and hyper focus on them to the point of exhaustion. And I'm the type of gamer, especially lately, as my attention span grows shorter and shorter, that I need options in my games. I need to feel like a game has the ability to reinvent itself, to really keep me hooked, like how the Resident Evil games constantly evolve every couple of hours, or like how in God of War 2018, just when it could have gotten a wee bit stale, you unlock the Blades of Chaos. But anyway, with that being said, it surprised the hell out of me to see how Hellblade, being at its core a very simplistic game, kept me hooked and engaged the whole way through. That's because this game clearly knew what it had going for it, what really worked, and it polished those aspects to damn near perfection. One of the first things you'll notice when you load up Hellblade for the first time is the phenomenal sound design, from the sounds of the wind and the rain, the creaking of the trees, fire popping and burning around you, swords slashing and clashing into each other. It's all so insanely immersive. No questions asked, some of the best sound design that I've ever experienced. And that's not even mentioning the voices that are constantly speaking in Senua's mind. That aspect of the game could have easily been overused very quickly, but for me, it never did. As you're going on this journey, you have these voices in your head that accompany you. Sometimes they tell you stories or give you some backstory and world building. Sometimes they elevate you and get Senua through some of her lowest points where she's struggling the most, either with puzzles or enemies or within the narrative. But other times they just shit on you and tell you how bad you're doing and make you second guess yourself. And again, I don't mean just to Senua within the confines of the narrative. They make the player second guess themselves too, which is amazing and I love it. Sometimes you'll be stuck in an area trying to solve a puzzle and the voice will mention how you've already been here or how you're clearly lost and you don't know where you're going. It's great. And again, this aspect of the game could have gotten so old so fast and been annoying to no end. But for me, it never did, because the way it's presented is just top tier. The way it works within the story, the way it works for Senua as a character, the way it works technically as a gameplay mechanic is just, again, insane. And it also sets the tone and the themes for the game as well, which I love, because the character of Senua clearly has a lot of mental health shit going on. And I love how it plays into practically everything you do in this game. It makes you question what's real and what's not real, what you're actually doing on this quest, and what's all just some twisted mind game designed to torment you, and what's actually real life threats you have to physically overcome. I used to love games and just stories in general that messed with the perception of what's real and what's not real. I still do for the most part. The Silent Hill franchise is one of my all-time favorites, but stories like that are becoming more and more of a hard sell for me, mainly because I've already consumed so many narratives that do it so phenomenally well. It's so hard to come across something that feels like it can do those themes in a new and unique way. They are often presented in such cliche, overdone ways, and Hellblade does give us, in my opinion, a super traditional story, told in a way that has been done before, but they managed to deliver it in a way that feels wholly their own. That's so immersive and well done that while you're playing it, you'll swear that you've never really experienced anything like it before. But it's not just the audio design, but the character and monster designs in this game are insanely cool as well. The basic monsters, men, hybrid things that you fight, I never got sick of looking at them, but more specifically, I loved the design of all the bosses in this game. They were all distinct, and I feel like they were memorable at the end of the day. But this game is not just about the aesthetics. I also like fighting the enemies as well in this game. The combat is super simplistic, yet I found it effective. It's your basic dodge, block, parry, heavy attack, light attack style combat. And like I said, I had fun with it. It was challenging enough to keep you on your toes, to make you feel like every movement you made mattered, but it wasn't a soul-crushing experience. It's not going to test you to your absolute limits, at least not on the standard difficulty. But the combat did get a bit too repetitive by the time the game ended, and here's where I'm going to shift into some of the critiques that I have with Hellblade. Like I said earlier in this video, one of my biggest problems with most AA games is how they often take one or two gameplay mechanics and they milk it for all that it's worth. And unfortunately, Hellblade isn't really an exception to that rule. Every combat encounter in this game is going to feel exactly the same, for the most part at least, for both the standard enemies and the bosses, and that was a bit of a letdown for me. But you'll also find yourself doing other gameplay mechanics over and over and over again as well. For example, this game really likes environment puzzles, and you'll be doing the same rehashed environmental puzzles over and over and over. And then when you get to a new section, it'll be a different kind of environment puzzle that it throws at you, but these new puzzles will be solved the same way as the old ones, which is just lining things up with each other. So even though they're different, they still feel the same. But I will say, for whatever this is worth, I didn't get that bored doing them. Normally games, when I'm forced to do the same thing over and over, I tap out mentally pretty early on. But in this game, I was engaged the whole way through. That doesn't mean I loved doing them. That doesn't mean I forgave the repetition. It just means that for a AA game, with all the trappings of a AA game, Hellblade still presented itself as being head and shoulders above most of its peers. And now I get into my final thoughts. Hellblade subverted my expectations in both positive and negative ways. I actually went into this game expecting to really love the gameplay experience, but dislike the story and the overall narrative. But at the end of the day, it was the narrative and the technical aspects that carried me through for the most part, while the gameplay I found to be, again, enjoyable, but definitely the weakest part of this overall package. And now, after beating Hellblade, it does alter my expectations for Hellblade 2 in both positive and negative ways. In terms of negatives, I'm now expecting, honestly, a lot less from the second game. My expectations are now lower, which in reality is probably a good thing, because for me, with lower expectations also comes a more open mind. But at the same time, seeing how limited this first game is, I can see so many ways that the second game can improve upon this formula, which does also raise my expectations, weirdly enough. This is an insanely solid foundation, and unless the developers go out of their way to not innovate at all, the second game can easily blow this one out of the water. All they have to really do is add a little bit more variety to the combat, a little more sense of discovery to the world, a little more surprises with the enemy variety, and if they do those things, I truly believe the second game could be a Game of the Year contender, also assuming the narrative is good and doesn't just feel like you're going through the same process again. But anyway, that's my thoughts after playing Hellblade for the very first time in 2024. Have you played Hellblade before? If you have, what do you think about it? Is it one of your favorite games? Is it one of your favorite AA games, or do you think it's overrated? But also tell me, what are your expectations going into Hellblade 2 in terms of the narrative and the game itself? But anyway, thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far, and consider subscribing if you haven't already.
For every battle won, a greater battle takes its place. And so it goes, until we fall.